mañana. Tú sabes que jugamos.
Hello, Yasmin. Hello, Ili. We're just gonna give it one
Hey,
more before we start.
sure, no worries,
Just waiting for people to join in.
of course.
All right, so it's 11:10. I think we can make a start. So good morning, everyone. This is Rabab Khaddaj, and I will be facilitating this discussion. First, thank you all for joining the networking activity, which, as Alada said, we are doing in these kind of difficult times, but really very important to have this discussion together. And also thank you for choosing to join this room whereby we will be discussing around the Sustainable Development Goals. But before moving into any introductions or the core of discussion, I just want to highlight that this is really a very, very free discussion. There are no rules except like respecting one another, but really the main aim is for us to connect together, to have like a space, a very free space for us to share opinions, to talk about our thoughts about the sustainable development goals in our countries, in the Euromed, and even beyond that. So really feel free to express yourselves. We have around 50 minutes before we move back into the plenary room, before we start the next part of this networking activity. So be relaxed, enjoy your coffee, and like feel free to express yourselves openly. Before going into the core of the discussion, I think it would be good for us to get to know who's in this room, to connect more efficiently. So maybe if we can start by saying our names, our country that we come from, work or education, and let's say our favorite sustainable development goal. So I'll start as an example, and then maybe we can use I can't see the raised hand feature, but maybe just unmute and speak up. So this is Rabab Khaddaj. As I said, I'm from Lebanon. I'm the Regional Project Support Officer for YMV, and I'm a civil and environmental engineer by education. Okay, so my favorite SDG, that's a hard one. Not saying that the rest are like less important or anything, but I think I would choose SDG number 11 because given my background in civil engineering, I have worked a lot on sustainable cities and communities. So that would be my like favorite one. Going next, I see Eli, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, so the feature works. It's in the participants one. So if people wants to raise their hand, they can click on participant and then they can see it. So my name is Eli Jmail. I work for the British Council. And I run the Young Med Voices in the South Med, based here in Beirut. I have a master's degree in financial economics. So my background is in finance and macroeconomics. However, the topic of sustainable development is a really an important one if we want to survive and let our future generation survive by 2050. My favorite SDG is SDG 13, actually, climate action, along with SDG 10, reducing inequalities among nations. And I'm very happy to be in this conversation.
Thank you so much, Eli. Anyone who wants to go next? Sure, Salma, go ahead.
I recently graduated from Faculty of Science, Cairo University with double major in chemistry and biochemistry, so I'm with scientific background. Regarding my favorite SDGs, actually it's very hard, as you mentioned, Rabab, because all of them are my favorite, but I can also choose two of them, SDG number 4 and SDG 11. As regarding SDG 11, I've built on it my argument in the final local YMV in Egypt, so it's my favorite as well.
Thank you, Salma. Good, we have one SDG in common.
Yes.
Anyone who wants to go next?
I can go next.
Sure, Fakhri.
Okay. I am Fakhri Jayousi. I'm from Palestine. Actually, I'm also a civil engineer. I finished my bachelor's degree. I'm currently working in an engineering firm, and I hope to continue my studying in environmental engineering and environmental management, because it's a pillar in sustainable development. It's very nice. I'm not very certain about the numbers of SDGs. You guys seem to know all of them, but I'm really interested in water, in clean water and the environment for everyone. This is very important, I believe, especially in the Palestinian case, but I don't want to explain furthermore. Let's stick to this.
Thank you so much, Fakhri. Yes, definitely. Water is, I think, like the most common struggles, upcoming struggles around water. So thanks a lot for that. Anyone who wants to go next? Sure, Carmen.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carmen. I'm the OYB project manager in British Council, Lebanon. And I have a background of business, business administration, also continued taking project management. I also have a certificate of English language teaching for adults. So I like to, like the education for me is continuous. So I like to diversify all the time. My favorite SDG, I can't say just one. It's several, but the top 3, I guess it's SDG 16 for strong institutions, and SDG 13 for climate action, and SDG 4 for quality education. But I love all of them, but these are the closest to my.
Thank you, Carmen. I saw the education coming after all the education stuff that you've done. I think we have all people in the room to introduce themselves. So before really kicking off the discussion, thank you for introducing yourselves. The diversity in the room is a lot, and this is really what the discussion is about. So as I said in the beginning, as much as this is a free space, just to set some ground rules in order for us to have an effective discussion. So feel free to express whatever you want. Definitely this is a safe and free space, but respect remains a main pillar for all of us to really have an effective discussion. So no matter how much we might hear opinions that intimidate us, that are different from our backgrounds, this is really what we would like to hear. We would like to hear the different opinions, but I would just like to highlight that to keep all like the respect among us, and just to avoid interrupting each other. So as Elise said, we can go to the participants tab next to the chat and use the raise hand feature whenever we want to speak up or participate in the discussion. And I don't want to feel like I'm dominating the discussion. So please, the discussion is all about you. I'm just here to moderate. I'm just gonna maybe ask a guiding question for us to start. So if you can start by asking what you think the most pressing SDG is generally and in your country. So I know Fakhri talked about water being very pressing for Palestine. So I would like to hear all your opinions on what is the most pressing SDG in your country and why do you think it is the most pressing SDG? So you can feel free to just use the raise hand feature. Sure, Salma.
Okay, so I guess the most pressing one, not only in my country, in Egypt, I guess SDG 4, quality education. It's really important for the whole world because I guess it's the key word for achieving all the other SDGs. Because if we reform or improve our quality education or the quality of our education, so we will get a future generation with a better mentality who can develop everything and achieve all the other SDGs. So I guess it's the pressing and the most important SDG because if we really work on this one very well, we will be able to achieve the others. So SDG number 4.
Thank you so much, Selma. Yes, I think even the interconnectedness between the SDGs does highlight that education like is a key pillar for achieving the rest of the SDGs, definitely. Anyone who wants to go next after Selma? Sure, Eli.
Thanks, Selma. I do agree. I mean, SDG 4 is, I mean, they are all interconnected, but I feel that the SDGs, when they were set by the UN and when they have developed the Agenda 2030, which I think, you know, it's in 10 years' time, despite I think that will be delayed due to COVID, but still when it was put, I think the idea was that there isn't one more important than the other. The idea is really to reach all of them by 2030, to achieve, I mean, the goals by 2030, because you cannot, isolate one from the other, and you cannot reach one goal and not the other. You cannot have people that who are equally educated but do not think of the consumption of others or without taking care of our climate, our environment or our planet or the animals or the life underwater. So I think it's one of these things that you have to to do it together, which means that we're all in it together in terms of experts in some field, countries who have more kind of input than others, countries who have more threats than others needs to be more supported. So I think it's like an effort for everyone to be making. So by 2030 we can achieve some of the SDGs. So that's, I think, that's why there is no one priority, I think, by the SDG. That's the point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. Yes, definitely. I think they all came from basic human rights. So everything that is highlighted in the SDGs and that came after the Millennium Development Goals, they came from basic rights. So definitely we're not prioritizing, but it's on some countries or governments' agenda to push for one SDG more than other, depending on the needs of the specific country, but they are all interconnected, as you said, and equally important for sure. Thanks, Eli. So anyone who wants to go next?
Sorry, Rabab, I got a bit disconnected, so I didn't hear the question. But what I concluded is that we are giving our opinion about like the SDG that our countries are working the most on. Is it something like that?
It's what's in your opinion is the most pressing SDG. Like you see that this is one of the most, like you need this SDG to be achieved first because you see that there's a strong need for this SDG to be fulfilled so that you can move on to other SDGs.
I mean, for Lebanon, I guess all SDGs have to be pressed. It's not just one thing. It's several things. It is the quality of education because the curriculum is so like the education system, not curriculum, is so outdated and not very friendly with 21st century. And this is something I see it as a core because it. This is the key, or this is like the way for raising a generation that has, you know, good expertise and keep them in the country, not just suffering from a brain drain or something. So I see the quality education as a really important element, but like personally, I don't see any improvement in that area, but I do see the urgency of it. The other thing is the climate action, but like specifically here in Lebanon, like we don't have any culture of recycling, sourcing the waste and all this. And this culture should be introduced, especially for the new generation, because not just for the pollution, but also it can provide a source of electricity, a power. So this can, you know, solve us the issue of electricity and the fuel not being there. So yeah, as you can see, that we have a lot of things to work on, but like there's nothing concrete action where you can see that people are actually working. So I'm not sure even by 2030 if we'll be reaching any of these goals achieved.
Definitely. So this actually leads to one of the second questions that I was thinking about, like whenever the SDGs come into mind. So you highlighted that the SDGs may not be achievable by the set time frame. Eli also talked about the COVID, but really, like, I'm going to just paste the question in the chat box for whoever like has any connection problems. So do you believe that the 2030 agenda is realistic and achievable by the set time frame? And what do you think that some issues are with this agenda? So Carmen said that there's no concrete action so far that's being taken towards achieving the SDGs in Lebanon. Eli has said that maybe they will be pushed further because of the coronavirus. So what do you think, like if you were to challenge the sustainable development goals, they are definitely coming from rights, but the agenda itself, the 2030 agenda for the SDGs, what gaps do you think like the UN, maybe UNDP more specifically, have fallen into when they have set this agenda? Sure, Carmen.
I believe Eli raised before me, so just don't want to take his turn.
No, it's fine. The moderator gave you the right. So
yeah, I thought that was from last time. Sorry, Eli.
No, it's okay. That was from last time. I lowered it and I rose it again.
Okay.
So it's fine.
Well, you raised it again, so please go ahead.
If Rabab is okay with that.
Yeah, definitely, Eli.
Okay, so I think actually due to COVID that we have, you know, a lot of counties have been directly impacted and individuals. So eradicating poverty, for instance, we were doing a lot better, I think, in the last couple of years, and now we're back, I think, to square, one or zero even. So the impact of COVID on countries, as governments, nations, but also on people, was very big. That a lot of people went back to under poverty line, and a lot of people lost their jobs. So also impacting SDG 8 in terms of economic growth, for the inequality, like SDG 10, for the climate action on SDG 13. So now health comes before the environment, or before the reducing, recycling, reusing, because people use plastic mask, face mask, and other PPE, we call them personal protective equipment, which are very harmful to the environment. So there are new priorities which are health related, that have taken us steps back in terms of other SDGs. So that's why I was saying, to cover, we are going to be kind of delayed to achieve the goals by 2030. Now, what's the way for it? There are a lot of ways. I think first, there is the confidence question. So people are still afraid. There is no confidence. There is no trust in terms of what's coming next. So things are still uncertain. So before we can really answer the question of the vaccine for COVID, and ensuring people can be immunized and well, and healthy, we can't really walk into other things. In Maslow's, we always talk about the basic needs, and I think this is a basic need. You can't be talking about achieving, going to the moon before you feel good. Now we see that presidents and leaders of most powerful countries are, sitting in bed in hospitals because they are, they have COVID. So I think that's really, the world have to unite on finding, I think, the cure for that virus, so that we can really work on other things.
Thank you, Eli. Yes, definitely. COVID has changed like the way everyone looks at the world, their needs. I think health has become a priority for all of us now, really. And the main concern is to find like the vaccine or even the cure for that. So yeah, thank you for your input. Carmen?
Yeah, thank you, Eli. Thanks, Rabab. Actually, I completely agree with Eli. The priorities are now changed due to COVID-19, and they're now even saying that it might not be solved even the next year. It might go to 2022. I don't know to what extent this statement is true or not. But definitely the priorities changed because of that, and health comes first as one of the basics, human rights, especially in developing countries where this right is probably a bit neglected than the developed countries. So I don't see achievable that by 2030, this agenda or strategy will be, like I don't see it. It's enough time frame for this, and I don't know if everyone agrees, but we never saw something like a platform where it shows you the work in progress in these SDGs, and like worldwide. And I think this is needed where we can really focus on wherever we have a gap or a lack in it, so we can of course, if it is also aligning with the country's priorities, to work on that towards achieving it. So whenever there is no like monitoring, and now I'm being a bit a project manager aspect, but if there is no monitoring and evaluation in this, in this type of agenda that is so broad, and it has a lot of like sub-agendas underneath each SDGs, I don't think it will be achievable even achieving this by 2050. So we need to have a good, um, a solid platform where we can see this progress, and when we can do some monitoring and evaluation and see where we lack at, so we can work towards that.
Thank you, Carmen. Yes, like this is very, a lot of critical thinking in there, because when I posed the question, I think that, so Eli has shared the link where we have a bit of progress, but I think one of the major things is that even the indicators that were put in that list for each SDG are a bit broad, as you said, and varying from one country to another. So for developing countries, it's definitely going to be much harder than already developed, and I'm very cautious with the use of developed and developing countries. But as like this is with the international, let's say, standards, it is going to be harder for developing countries to achieve this progress. So the progress is usually worldwide. It says that we have achieved this much, but nothing really that is specific, as Carmen said. There's no much liability, like the SDGs as the Millennium Development Goals. They said they will achieve this by 2015, and then in 2015, they came together and they set like broader goals for the SDGs. But I think that there was a gap there with really identifying why were the Millennium Development Goals not achieved, what they needed to do better, because I think that the SDGs came broader and putting more burden on countries for them to achieve it, with like a lot of hardships for these countries and a lot of barriers for them to achieve the SDGs. So yes, definitely, Carmen. So Carmen's saying she thinks this is where the EU, international NGOs, cultural organizations, UN agencies should base their projects on to achieve all these goals. Definitely, I think they need to like fill in these gaps in order for them to proceed further. So any other thoughts, Salma, Fakhri?
I think Eli and Carmen actually said everything. And I agree with Carmen that every country has its own priorities or own circumstances. And the goals given are very broad, like in poverty. But I mean, even what do you mean by ending poverty? Because there is varying limits in every country. For example, in Switzerland, the minimum wage limit is, I think, $4,000 or something. While in other countries, it's $50, $20, $40. So this difference should be indicated and illustrated more, and giving the normal people, because you can't achieve these goals without the help of the normal citizens in each country. So if they don't have broad and deep understanding of what you are trying to do, they won't be able to help. So this is what I think should be improved.
Thank you, Fakhri. Yes, definitely. The awareness for the people is one that's very important. So as you said, the SDGs are very broad, which is very good because they might cover every aspect. But if we are talking about like an average citizen, how easy it is for him or her to like grasp these thoughts and try to like approach them, because governments can always do work for SDGs, but if the citizens do not, let's say, buy this idea, it's definitely going to be harder for them to achieve the SDGs. Yes, thank you so much, Fakhri. Any other thoughts or opinion on that? Okay, so I think since this is kind of a youthful discussion, we can ask this question, which is of interest to me, but I think of interest to everyone in this room. So what do you think is really the role of us, the youth, in contributing to these sustainable development goals? If you have any experiences, so I know, Salma, when you were doing the introduction, you have said that you've done work on some of the SDGs. So what kind of projects, initiatives that you have done or taken part of to support your favorite SDG or really any other SDG? And how do you think youth in general can take action to just like support the SDGs and make sure that they are achievable, if not by 2030, like in an achievable, more achievable time frame that is not, let's say, very far? Sure, Selma.
Okay, so I guess our role can be through participating in volunteering work through the NGOs, the startups, and all of the organizations which care about the SDGs. So if I would be talking about myself, that we have a project here in Egypt called Farmia. It's mainly for SDG 4 quality education. So we were like making a simulation process for the students or the young generation to let them improve their mentality and their mind, and to learn more about the good education in order for them to be well raised, in order for them to be in the future be able to achieve all the SDGs. Also, I worked before on the environment SDGs, as we were giving sessions and simulation process also for this SDGs. For all of this were for the student to schools, which we believe that they are the future. And also, when I joined YMV, it was my main goal to defend the SDGs. All my arguments through the local YMV in Egypt, or the Erasmus Plus exchange, which was in quarantine, or the Euromed, all my argument was based on the SDGs. So this was my main aim when joining the YMV, to defend and to tell all the world that how important the SDGs are. That's it.
Thank you, Selma. So definitely volunteering, raising awareness about the SDGs, and even, as you said, using YMV, so debate as a tool to advocate, and also like to use the research behind the SDGs in order to build arguments and have like a future discussion that is based on these SDGs. Very important input. Thank you. Any other thoughts? Sure, Eli.
So this question is really important in terms of the role of young people. And I don't see an easy answer, of course, but I mean, there are different ways. So there is the leading by example, which I know it's maybe the impact is it's like the butterfly effect. So it's a small impact, but it shows a lot. So if young people really believe in the SDGs and the sustainable development, then they can, in their own practice and behavior and the way, you know, they approach things, the way they, you know, put their waste, you know, and by sorting them, recycling them, in, you know, not agreeing maybe to attend events where panelists do not have gender equality. So all these, you know, small things, if they are kind of done on an individual basis, then they show a lot to others. So this is one way if we start by ourselves. But also in terms of a bigger kind of outlook. So whenever there is a program, whether it's on the local government level, municipality or national one, and also not to take part when things do not respect kind of the SDGs, at least, because sometimes there is no awareness. So if a mayor, you know, they decide on a project, say, I don't know, a marathon or a sport competition, they might not know that this SDG exists. So if we say, we want to be part of the design of any new budget or program, or even after the implementation, and we do say we cannot do that because it does not respect, you know, this or that, then they would ask, so why not? And then we explain. So it's just that whatever we do now in YMV in terms of a voice, I think we should have it in our community to raise awareness, because awareness is important. So when you talk about it, then people will know, and bit by bit they will start also changing their behavior and you know, approach to things. I think that's, you know, should be the role of young people, at least.
Thank you so much, Eli. Yes, definitely. So we're talking here about active citizenship in general. So how it is really the youth's role to be active citizens and to promote active citizenship and to be like really raising awareness about these issues. And we tend usually with the SDGs in particular, we tend to separate them from our normal lives. We look at it as if it is more of a scientific matter, but really it isn't. It's that we do in our everyday lives that leads to the SDGs. So if you don't live by it, it's not gonna be done by research papers. It's funny even how in conferences related to the SDGs, they use a lot of plastic bottles. So it's a bit like controversial when they do that. So definitely like really having this awareness. Now that you said it, I've thought about how many conferences I've participated in for the SDGs, and they've done everything that is opposite. So yes, having this awareness is very important. Any other thoughts? Fakhri, you had something to say, you unmuted.
I am muted by mistake, but okay, I'll speak.
So sorry, I didn't.
لا, it's okay. So I believe in baby steps. So when I look at the SDGs, they are very broad and big, like names or words. So I believe the youth have a big role in improving themselves on small measures. For example, we need better communication, and debates can help with that. Also, we need some kind of human resources development, like time management. We all put on our CVs, I'm good at time management. But what does time management actually mean in like the measurable sense in the community? Also, as I said, communication, like having courses in different political systems, understanding the world, broadening your sense of other countries, their economy, their politics. So improving our knowledge and our personalities can help in the future bring future leaders, bright leaders who can actually achieve this change. So my problem with the SDGs is, as I think Elise said earlier, or Carmen, is we're trying to achieve something very big that we don't have the base for. And our base should be our youth. And so I think improving our youth and their capacities with the programs like YMV is what the youth should participate in and concentrate on. So having a bright youth and bright future leaders is the key for achieving the SDGs in the future, I believe.
Thank you so much, Fakhri. I'm sorry I got disconnected for some reason. Zoom kicked me out of the session. But I heard you talking about baby steps towards achieving the SDGs and stuff that are more tangible on like the real life rather than having broad sets of steps that we don't really know how to start from, right?
Yes, and that can be achieved by improving our youth, whom will bring this change in the future.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So when we talk, I think this would be our final question to share our ideas before we go back to the plenary room. But really, when we think about the role of youth and even the UNDP, when they talk about the 2030 agenda, they do put a lot of burden on the youth for achieving these SDGs. So really, do you think that it is the role of youth, or is it the role of the governments, or is it really the role of both to have these SDGs achieved? Because like there's kind of, it's a bit controversial here because people say it is, and when we say youth, it's also the citizens and everyone in the society. So what do you think about that? I see that we have Eli and then Carmen.
Thanks, Rabab. Definitely not to put the burden on young people alone. I mean, that's not fair, of course, because it's a question of power, resource, experience. We have a lot of questions. So if we want just to name someone accountable, I would say governments, because they were elected by people to represent the interests of people. So the UN's, General Assembly, and then by government, I think they are accountable because they have taken the decision together to do SDG. So they should really offer an action plan, resource to apply it, even, kind of consequence for not applying some of them. Like the US has withdrawn from the Paris Agreement, which is toward achieving SDG 13 and other as well, without any, like consequence for that. They were not fined, they were not, they were not sanctioned. And I think we should really start doing that. So the responsibility, I think, it's at that level now. Like everything in that is lawful and in the legal terms, if the citizens do not abide by some laws, they are also fined. So this is where the government should also work with their citizens on first raising the awareness, but also putting some also measures on say industries that are not respecting the environment. Or in education or other stuff. Now, your question was, which is, is it really the role of young people? I can say the young people should have an interest, because it's their planet that is staying after 50 years, because those who are in power now will, kind of not be there after a couple of decades. So we should have we should be, as young people, interested in that. We should say, we should hold those in power accountable to tell them that you are messing with our future, because if you don't do it right, then it's us that we are paying. So we are kind of the beneficiaries, and as a beneficiary, you have a role, because your role is to monitor, your role is to be the role model, your role is to lead by example, to get your voice heard. So I think that's the role of young people here.
Thanks, Celia. Yes, definitely. Like the point on liability, whether for countries or for citizens, is very important. And one of the gaps really is that the SDGs are not like, they don't hold the countries liable if they don't achieve these SDGs. And also, as you said, like the matter of rights and duties of each citizenship. So it is definitely our right to have the government enforcing laws for these SDGs and setting plans forward, but it's also our duty to abide by this. So yeah, definitely. Carmen, just before I take you, we have Ahmed from Libya. So welcome, Ahmed, to this session. Just to give you like a small recap, we are talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular, what the role of youth is. And at this stage, we are just asking if it is the role of the youth or the government to achieve these sustainable development goals. And we got the first answer from Eli, which was that it is really the government's accountability, but also like we need to have interest as youth in achieving these SDGs. So welcome to the session. I'll take Carmen.
Yeah, thanks, Rabab. Actually, part of my answers were already shared by Eli. So it's definitely the government should be involved, the decision maker should be involved. But I think there should be a sort of we should build a bridge between young people and these decision makers. So and this is where I see YMV as the core of of this transaction, let's say, and it's very important for young people to know. As Eli mentioned, awareness is very important. So they should first be aware that these SDGs exist and they exist for a purpose. So they will choose the ones that are, very close to them and or maybe suffering at the moment from them, and they should put together a plan. By together, I mean them and the decision makers. So we should have like young people, at least in Lebanon, they always have this lack of trust towards these decision makers because of all the corruption that is happening. But I do believe that there are people who really want to work for the country. So I cannot generalize and say all politicians are, or all decision makers are here just to take people's money. So we should first break this kind of ice between those decision makers and young people. And I see what I mean, the way I see it is that there should be a lot of programs like YMV, or maybe this will be the second phase of YMV, where these decision makers will be even more involved in the program, not just being invited in a policy dialogue or in a couple of meetings. They should be really involved in during the cycle of these activities, so that these young people will know how to raise their voice in the right way, and how to put their recommendations on a paper, do like a policy draft in a very accurate way. So I think there should be a balance between the two. I mean, young people are the future, is going to be the future generation, but they're also here to learn and to, they have their responsibilities as like going to the school, university. So this kind of burden will be too much on if they will be just being bared by them. So it should be a balance between the two.
Definitely, Carmen, thank you. And when you talk about the bridge between the policymakers and the youth, I think it's very important to highlight that, because as much as there is a gap by saying the policymakers are on one hand and youth are on another, there's really a gap in, let's say, the age, if we're talking about at least the South Med. So whereby really these politicians, they need someone to tell them more about the SDGs. And since we are expecting from youth to be interested and educated, for them to be active citizens, then this is very important. And I think YMV does that really well in two ways. So first, in the advocacy through holding these debates regularly and talking about issues under the SDG, but then really about taking out these recommendations that emerge from all these debates and the advocacy and the talks, and presenting them to policymakers in order to feed in the discussion that happens maybe on a higher level, on a more level of decision maker and people who really have the power to do the change. So yes, definitely. Any other thoughts before we conclude our discussion? Because I think that we need to be moving into the plenary room.
I was just, well, I thought if in the case that I was going to get to speak, yeah, I was just going to say, I follow a similar train of thought as Carmen did, with regards to the bridge that needs to be made between the youth and governments, in particular in like the South Mediterranean, because the people who are most affected, or you could say that soak in the ideas of the SDGs most, are the youth. In countries like these, they're the ones who are usually the most invigorated to really pursue them or to implement them in their communities. And the roles of both the government and the youth go almost hand in hand. Many of these civil society organizations that work, for the SDG goals, usually do so in the form of awareness, the form of teaching people about the ideals, what needs to be done, why we should, calling for slow implementation of these and the slow acceptance of these ideas, and what needs to be done to actually get them achieved in their countries. And through that, we can see the actual growth of our country. We can see the actual development of them and the sustainability. But it is, of course, the government's role in actually, straight up implementing them in their countries. But that can only happen if they can see, they can only happen if they see the efforts made by the youth and actually bringing awareness to it. Because many of the countries, especially in South Mediterranean, they suffer from this, especially. So yeah, I do agree with what Carmen is saying in that respect. It's pretty much the case as far as I've seen.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. Yes, so just like to wrap up from all the feedback, like it's really let's say, the accountability of the government and its responsibility in like shaping this path for the SDGs, but also the duty of youth as active citizens in order for them to raise awareness and really move forward with this path. And I think that we should be joining back to the plenary room, but just to say that thank you so much for these very diverse thoughts, for this like really rich discussion. I personally got a lot of thoughts and feedback from that, and hopefully one day we will achieve these SDGs and we will not have to really discuss our basic rights as things that are very far from being achieved. So yes, hopefully, and see you in the other room. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabab.
Thank you, Rabab. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers. We'll see you.